Hey Trailblazers and Tarmac Tacklers, welcome to the Maximum Mileage Running Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Hancock, USCA and UK Athletics qualified coach in ultra running and running fitness. And this week on the podcast, it is Faye and I hosting our very own athletes on one of our favourite things that we do for our athletes, which is the hot seat. This is where our athletes put us on the spot. They ask us their running questions. And this week, this month's hot seat was a doozy. We answered questions, particularly some really good ones around fueling and hydration and nutrition in general. It is January. It is that time of year where people are maybe thinking about getting rid of some of that extra fluff that we've gained over Christmas, myself included. But, you know, a lot of us are training for marathons and ultra marathons, and that is a really bad time to be trying to lose weight. So we talk about that. We talk about how you can continue to fuel yourself in the right way and look after yourself, plus many other topics. So have a listen and enjoy. Before we get into it, big shout out to our partners, Runderwear, Talk Fitness, Soulmate, Two Start Coffee, Ugoku Projects, and I didn't call them out last week, and I should have done really. But the Protein Works as well. I've worked with the Protein Works for about a year now myself. We've talked about this on the podcast, and in fact, I think we talk about it on the hot seat as well, that protein intake is hugely important for us runners. And I get my extra protein intake from the Protein Works products. I'm actually currently still digesting one of their ridiculous bars. It's a vegan protein bar, absolutely amazing, amongst many of their products. So thank you to those guys. And for any of you listening, join the Maximum Mileage Running Podcast Facebook group. Just search Maximum Mileage Running Podcast, or you can see it in the show notes. And you can avail discounts exclusive to people in the Facebook group itself. So get yourself in there and you can get yourself a number of discounts with those suppliers. Enjoy. Hello, everybody. How you doing?
Hello.
Hello.
Right, now we've got the technological thing sorted and we're all on. Thank you for joining the hot seat. I always like doing these. It's nice to get a few people on. I think we tailed off them in the summer, didn't we, Faye? Because
yes,
it was school holidays. We did a couple of people turned up, and it ends up just being a bit of a chat, really, and not much of a proper hot seat. So it's good to be back. Very important time of year. There's a lot of good stuff going on. People are ramping up their marathon training. Kyle, especially, you've got 2 coming up. And in fine fettle so far for it. Nath is getting himself back into the swing of things. We've got Sharon knocking out ultras left, right, and centre, although a lot less than she had in her diary at first, because I've chopped them right down. Get rid of that one.
Oh, I was going to say, most people need a running coach for motivation. I need one to rein me in.
Calm you down, exactly, yeah. It was like an ultra every 2 weeks at one point. We've got Nick over in Ohio running in sub-zero temperatures. How is it at the moment, Nick?
Oh, it's terrible. There's like 12 inches of snow everywhere, and the temperatures aren't as bad now. They're still bad, but I've been having to do all my runs in little side street, like housing developments, like hundreds of laps, because I can't run on sidewalks anywhere or trails.
Oh, it's pretty bad over there. We're on like storm number 46 in the space of 9 days or something. There's another one coming tomorrow. Yeah, Ben is doing marathons. He's very much in full swing, although tweaked his back yesterday. So did I, interestingly, this morning. So hopefully that's just something. We'll be all right, Ben. We're just old, mate. That's all.
Yeah, exactly. Not a good start to the week though, but hopefully it gets better tomorrow.
Yeah. Patrick, new to the crew. He's building back after a bit of a layoff, but he's got some big races planned this year. So welcome, Patrick.
Thank you.
Always. And Dawn, nice to see your name in a box.
Hi.
What is it you're training for, Dawn? You're one of Faye's, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm training for Belfast Marathon.
Very cool. Yeah, I've got somebody else doing that. Right, okay. So before I start delving into some of the questions that have been sent in ahead of time, has anybody got one whilst we are on the call? Nick, you've always got questions. What do I do when there's 45 inches of snow outside?
Yeah. I guess I do have a question maybe. So someone had mentioned about having an insatiable appetite. I have the opposite. I, as my mileage and training increases, especially on longer runs, and I think, Nick, I've talked to you one-on-one about this, but I have no appetite and it's very hard for me to eat. Even junk food, like I have no desire to even eat junk food. So it's a struggle for me to get in enough calories to be able to fuel my training and recover for the sessions coming up.
Interesting one.
I don't know which one's worse or which one I'd prefer, but
Yeah,
not having an appetite sucks because you feel it the next day or the day after quite a bit.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the first things I'd be asking you is no underlying, viruses, bugs flying around. You don't feel like you're ill, or was this just kind of something that
No,
is?
this is something I've kind of always had for the last couple of years.
Okay.
I've struggled with fueling enough for my training.
Which is interesting as an ex-bodybuilder who would have gone through bulks. I'm sure you're quite used to.
Yeah, and maybe that's
large
what did it
volumes
to
of
me
food.
is I just don't ever want to eat again.
I mean, I would say one of the first things I would probably be looking at is eating smaller portions but more often, and trying to kind of drip feed yourself rather than going, trying to sit down and go, oh my God, that's a big meal I've got to eat all in one go. That's probably one of the things that would come to mind first of all. Would you agree with that, Faye?
Yeah, Nick, I feel your pain because I have always had a similar in regard. Well, okay, in the last kind of, let's say, 6 or 7 years, I've struggled to fuel to the right level to fuel my activity, and to the point, like you say, where I'm like, I just can't eat anything else. And it just, like you said, even the thought of eating like what would be considered like junk food or treat food, you're like, I can't even face it.
Yep.
But I would say, interestingly, the approach of I'm trying to at the moment train myself to eat more, but more often, because I had that tendency of leaving real swathes of time between eating because I wasn't hungry. And then it almost made it worse. So I find that if I eat little and often and make it quality in regards to what I'm eating, then it tends to work better. Because what happens if I leave it too long and then I try and eat a big meal, it's just not happening. And then I find myself the next day, maybe for a session, feeling like I've not eaten enough. I've just not got enough in the tank. But yeah, I mean, I particularly struggle when it comes to refueling. So if I've been out on a long run, thinking about how much I'm eating afterwards. So I have to pace myself rather than think, oh, I'm going to have a really big feed now. I'm going to pace it and take it on gradually through the remainder of the day.
Yeah, I've tried that too. And I think where I especially struggle is on like my longer trail runs when I get into like the 4 or 5 or 5.5 hour mark. Like I'll do them in the morning and I'm not hungry for like the next 24 hours. And so it's really hard to eat. I've noticed that like in actual races, in ultras, and that's been my downfall in some of them is when I get, in the whatever 12, 15, 20 hour mark in an ultra, like it's just I don't eat for hours or taking any calories, and that's really hurt me in some races too.
Yeah, we've talked about that a couple of times already.
Yeah.
I think Nick, what might be an idea if that sort of little and often approach doesn't work, we've still got the issue with your gut on your big runs to work on as well. It's expensive working with nutritionists on a long-term basis. Incidentally, Faye has decided to invest in in something over the course of the next few months with a nutritionist. I don't think maybe instead of kind of going all in and going, well, I'm going to work with a nutritionist for the next 4 or 5 months, might be worth just reaching out to, in fact, I can introduce you to a couple and just have like a one-off consultation type call with them. And might cost you $100. Yeah, might be worth just sort of doing that one-off consultation as a starter, see how you get on with it, and we'll work from there. But I think when it starts coming into the realms of difficulties around eating, then it is worth starting to think about talking to a professional like a nutritionist. It's a bit like if you were injured, I wouldn't be trying to fix your injury. I'd be putting you in front of a physio, and I think that's the kind of situation I think you're in at the moment. So worth having a chat with them.
Yeah, definitely.
Sharon, to answer your question, and I'm the same. I'm ravenous constantly. I could eat literally all day, every day, non-stop. And it's first of all, an element of control is needed, and in terms of control, maybe writing down what you eat. I don't think you need to like do MyFitnessPal tracking, that kind of stuff, but maybe kind of writing down like what am I eating for each meal. You mentioned about fiber. Fiber is satiating. It's also good for health in general, good gut health. So it is worth just having a little look at what is it you're eating, and when you're eating it. So some of the things we've talked about is having some of the lower fiber carbohydrates before your hard sessions and long runs. But outside of that, you do want to be thinking about your health. So, high fiber, good quality foods. Don't be reducing your fiber unless you've got issues like low FODMAP or IBS. Chris has just joined us. He's quite familiar with some of these sort of conversations around fibers and things. The other thing to look at is how much water are you drinking, because sometimes thirst can actually present itself as hunger, and actually you're not hungry, you're thirsty. Your body wants more water, especially the amount that you're running. You run 5 days a week, you strength train a couple of times a week, and it's not like you're training for a 5K. You're out there doing ultras and big marathons, and you're busy anyway, so it's worth having a look at how much are you drinking.
No, I do try and drink lots of water. Like I would say, like, I try and have like a large glass of water every morning, and then like with every meal I try and drink quite a lot. I'm just hungry all the time.
Sharon, are you eating enough protein?
Because I bought some. I now have a protein shake for breakfast, and I measure that out. And I have typically I'd have like white toast like before I'm going for a run with jam and peanut butter. And then when I come back, I have my protein shake. And then I'd have a fairly healthy lunch, like a jacket potato or, I don't know, soup or something. And then normal dinner, and probably a snack of cheese or something in the afternoon.
Straight off the bat,
I'd say it's not enough protein. It's definitely not enough food in general.
Yeah, soup for lunch might be healthy, but the caloric density of that could be next to nothing. Like if you have a broccoli soup, for example, that's like 100 calories. So I would say you're not eating enough in terms of volume of food. Protein 100% with Faye on that.
Okay.
I know you're not vegan or anything, are you? So have your soup with a chicken sandwich on the side of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your breakfast is a slice of toast with jam and peanut butter. Great before a run, but when you get back from the run, protein straight after the run isn't entirely necessary. It's more so the whole anabolic window. You must have protein within 20 minutes of your workout, otherwise, you're going to blow up. That was kind of left in the bro science world of yesteryear.
Okay.
Yes, you need protein and plenty of it, but it can be spaced throughout the day. You don't need to be like urgently getting it after a workout.
Okay.
What we do know though is that glucose absorption is it is heightened after exercise, particularly if you've done a hard run. So what you do want to be doing is making sure that whatever you have afterwards has got good carbs in it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, chocolate milkshake is like an ideal solution for a quick fix, because it's got protein, it's got carbs, and it tastes quite nice. I mean, we probably wouldn't have it every day.
No.
But
But
you know, have
after
a
your
sandwich
hard run,
afterwards.
so after your hard run and the long run, you do that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, let me give you an example. This is what I had before my long run yesterday. Or actually, today was a better example. So I'll have a bagel with peanut butter and jam, quite a bit of jam as well, like a 50-gram dollop of it. Two bagels usually. I'm looking to like get around 90 grams of carbs before I go on a hard run.
Yeah.
And then when I get back from the hard run, then I'll have a breakfast, like a proper breakfast.
Ah, okay.
This morning, 3 eggs, tomatoes, mushrooms, avocado, and toast.
Okay.
So that's where I'll
So
have
no
a proper
bacon or
breakfast.
sausage or anything like that.
No, I mean if that's your poison, then you go for it. But no, I'm. You know,
Okay.
you
Oh, that's
talk
good.
about having healthy food.
Yeah.
So like you've had your healthy lunches. That's my healthy breakfast because you know mushrooms amazing, great for immunity. Tomatoes full of vitamin C, avocado really healthy fats.
Okay.
You know, eggs full of protein, sourdough toast good for the gut. So that's the kind of thing that
Okay, I can
I sort
definitely
of
do
have.
that. Yeah, that sounds really appealing.
Yeah, there you go. So
Okay.
I would say you're not eating enough. Like you're
Not
eating quite healthy, but not enough.
And then, like your typical evening meal, what would you have? Like a, like turkey.
Yeah, just normal dinner really. Today I
Yeah.
just had we had mushroom pappardelle with pesto and I had some chicken in it for my extra
Okay.
protein. You know, so it's almost like somebody needs to write a book about, you know, good recipes for
Eating
runners.
more. I think there is somebody that's written a book, isn't there? My printer said it wouldn't download the 1,000-page or whatever it was. Like, my husband said, "You're not printing that off."
No, there you go. So yeah, plenty of ideas in there.
Okay.
And book number 2 is on the way as well. It's going to be 100 recipes.
Fabulous. Okay, thanks, Nick.
All right,
That's
cool.
your help.
Faye, did you have any questions thrown at you beforehand?
So what I'll do whilst we've just been speaking to Sharon. Sharon had a question regarding exercising during the menopause. Now, in regards to obviously it's quite a different beast to kind of managing and exercising around a cycle, because when you've got a cycle and you can track it, and you can track it where you are in the cycle. You can look at hormone levels, you can look at when's the best time to train, when is it beneficial to do more strength training, when is it more beneficial to do low intensity workout. But when it comes to perimenopause or menopause, it becomes a little bit more difficult. So what I would suggest, because you mentioned about tracking and a cycle, as it were, a bit like when you're tracking food and eating, it's sometimes worth keeping some kind of diary. And I mean this in regards to if you are someone that did or does track your cycle, I mean down to daily symptoms, how you're feeling physically, how you're feeling mentally. And if you start to track this over given weeks, months, you will start to notice a pattern. It will probably be different to that you had when you were, menstruating, but it will give you an idea of what your normal is now. And bearing in mind that every woman is totally different. So it's gonna, there is no one size fits all. My suggestion for any woman of any age would be to track and keep an eye on your cycle. Okay. So that comes down to, like I said, how hungry you are, how tired you are, how energized you are, how you're feeling physically in your body, how you're recovering from sessions as well. I think that's a really good marker as well. So I speak in regards to, during a cycle, the second part of your cycle, as an example, you are going to find yourself having to think more about recovery, and you're going to have to think more about taking on more protein because of a higher increase in progesterone and kind of catabolic hormones, so breaking down muscle tissue. So in that second part of the cycle, probably don't go to the gym and lift super heavy, because you'll find that DOMs will last forever. it just, you'll feel crap for a lot longer than if you do it in the first 2 weeks of your cycle. So in that first 2 weeks is like where you're like superwoman, because estrogen is high and that's your superpower. But the thing that comes with menopause is managing estrogen levels and trying to figure out, because you've got more of a depending on, and this all gets a bit complicated, but depending on what route you've taken in regards to managing menopause, think about hormone levels and think about how you feel. So it's no different in the sense of it's still really important to track what's going on with you. And that means every aspect of life, because it all impacts your training. So I would suggest some kind of diary where you're keeping track of certain key areas that really impact you. So I think the appetite thing is quite significant for you. And I think if you started to think about more protein, quality protein, you might find benefits not only in feeling more satisfied in regards to hunger, also potentially recovering quicker and feeling stronger. Okay, because you are training a lot, 5 days, maybe six sessions a week, that's a lot of training. So it's important to remember that you're not just a normal person. Like, none of us sat on this call now, we're not normal people, because an average person barely does 10,000 steps a day. So it's really important to think about where you are personally, rather than maybe comparing yourself to other people. So really think about you and what goes on with you physically and mentally, and see how that goes over a few months, and look out for different kind of signs and symptoms that might come about.
That was awesome, Faye. Yeah, really good. Just to add, you said how strong you felt in your last marathon the other day, Sharon, and how all those hill sessions have been helping you. Add in more protein, and you're just going to go up another level again. So yeah, really good. Good. Thank you, Faye. That was top draw stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, Faye, did you have a question thrown at you, or shall I go next? I don't mind.
You go next. I have got a couple more questions, but you go next.
Cool. Kyle, you asked a couple of questions. Well, it was one sort of quite big question, really, around recovery. Do you want to shoot it at me, or do you want me to read it out?
Yeah, sure. So mine was about recovery. So predominantly on the big sessions, and how much movement is good movement, how much rest is sort of should be required, like, in an ideal world versus a job, a child, and what you can get away with, really, and not focus on nutrition. Obviously, talk about that a lot, but really just like, should I be putting my feet up? I mean, where do you go from there, really? And obviously, thank you for answering it in depth already, but
that's right. I answered it quite specific to your situation, because yours is different to a few other people's, but some general kind of rules of thumb are, and Faye and I talked to Mike James, the endurance physio, on the podcast once, around how to recover. And I loved the term that he used, and I've started using it myself: get world class at the basics rather than being basic at the world class. Because some of the things that people start thinking about when we start talking about recovery, the sexy stuff is like massage guns, ice baths, Normatec boots, which I've got behind me here. All of these things are really, really good, but if you're not focusing on the basics, which are good sleep and rest, recovery, eating well, hydrating well, reducing stress in your life, they're kind of like, which is not easy in this day and age. Stress is kind of all around us, and I think if you are in a position where you can take a nap, that was one of the things you said, Carl. Should I, when I get back from a hard session or a long run, should I take a nap? Yeah, fucking hell yes, if you can. Like, that is, honestly, you talk to any elite athlete, and in fact, there's been some memes going around on Instagram recently of what the influencers on Instagram think is recovery, massage guns, foam rolling, sticking things up their asses, God knows what. But actually, like the elite athletes they just go for a sleep. They just go for a nap. Like, get really good sleep as best as you can. Is really, that is the best way to recover, alongside eating well and hydrating well. In terms of what should you be doing, I mean that's going to vary from person to person. Like some people I coach will go out, they'll do a 4-hour long run, and then they've got to go take the kids to the soft play area, or they've got to go shopping, because it's family day, or whatever it might be. So it really depends on personal circumstances. But should you do a hard session and then not move for the rest of the day? No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, I definitely think that our bodies are designed to move. They're not designed to sit in homeostasis all day. A lot of us do that when we're sat at a desk all day, and then we get up and then we go for a run, and then we're sat back down at the desk again, which isn't really very good recovery. So mobilization is good. Can you get some extra steps in during the day and get up and I mean, I've actually started standing up at my desk for the most part. Thank you to Simon, who's actually on the call, for giving me a little G up to do that, because my back's been bad. He said, stand up at your desk, and it does work. Faye's nodding because she stands up at her desk.
100%. I stand up at my desk mostly because I'm a fidget ass and I can't sit still. But I will say, and this is funny because one of my runners, I don't think she's here, Pam. When she started with me, she was struggling with her hamstring. And after a bit of investigation, I said, we were talking about what she does for a job. And she was saying, oh, I sit down loads. And I said, right, that's it. So I got her to set a 20-minute timer on her phone to get up every 20 minutes, whether that was just to stand up and then sit back down, but the idea, or just to walk to the other room and come back. The idea being that she was sitting for such prolonged periods of time, she was then expecting her body to go from a seated position, and then she'd get changed at lunchtime and jump out the door and expect her body to be able to run when it's been sat down for 4 hours. And something that I swear by, and it sounds a little bit ridiculous, but this is something I learned years ago when I became a PT. Before you do any form of exercise, if you've been sat down in whatever state it might be, in the car, at the desk, whatever, lie on the floor for a few minutes. Lie on the floor, let your body reset, and then carry on. Because to expect your body to have gone from sitting basically at right angles for however long to then going out and trying to run potentially quite quickly, your body's not going to like it and it's going to complain about it, especially over time. So it's just about thinking, like you said, Nick, moving as we were intended to move. I mean, we're not going to go out and work on the land or, whatever it might be, but just thinking about how we can kind of, work with ourselves rather than against it. So yeah, next time, whether, it's in the morning, lunchtime or evening, before you go out, just lie on the floor for a couple of minutes, reset, and then go.
Nice. But yeah, Carl, I mean, that active recovery moniker, it is a real thing. Our bodies are designed to move. So, yes, there should be rest, but also that active recovery thing is important as well. So doesn't have to be anything too purposeful, but certainly, you've got kids, so you can't sit still for more than 10 minutes, can you?
Yeah, I mean, that was my major sort of the question inside that really was like, I sometimes have massive step days where I'm like, my God, I've been on my feet all day. And like, yeah, I compensate and I rest where I can and I eat well. But I sometimes think, God, I could do with 10,000 less steps today, or like, but yeah, that's it really. I just wondered, could I increase my performance by resting more?
Like I say, I think it's being sort of purposeful. Like with anything really, it's being purposeful about it. Rest. If you can take a nap, if there is an opportunity to take a nap, yeah, I mean that's an absolutely golden thing to do. But
That's like a unicorn in my house.
Yeah.
No chance that will ever. Not for
But
another
if you,
16 years.
Yeah, if you can't take a nap, I would say the next best thing would be have a hot bath. That would be the next best thing. Cool. All right. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Go on, Faye.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions from one of my runners, Dawn, and I will go with, okay, because we've spoken about food and nutrition, and I know Nick loves this topic. So I'm going to bring this to the room. So Dawn asks, do you recommend doing at least one of your runs each week fasted, i.e. a foundation run?
No.
I knew
100% no. Especially
it's
if you're
one of
female.
Nick's favorite topics, so I thought.
No, especially if you're female. The benefits of running fasted, fat oxidization, etc., blah de blah, are far outweighed by the detriments, particularly for females, particularly as you start to get older. Things like it messes about with your hormones. It can cause bone density issues. I just wouldn't even do it once a week, let alone regularly. There's just no real kind of need for it. Is there perhaps an opportunity to get that fat oxidization in other ways, like, for example, having a low carb meal before you run? That is a safer way to do it, much better. But fasted, no, just a flat out no for me. I think it's just too much of a grey area, especially when it comes to female health. I'm quite a staunch no to fasted anything really. There's just no real benefit to come from it. What about you, Faye? What are your thoughts?
Well, I'd be lying to you if I've had this conversation with numerous people over the years, and I know I spoke to you about it when you started coaching me last year. I was that person who used to fast before all my runs because I run in the morning. Rarely did I eat breakfast because one, there wasn't enough time because I valued sleep too much, and two, I was busy, I was young, I thought I was like unstoppable. And you just think, what does it matter if I don't have breakfast? I'll get out, do my run, come home, then I'll have breakfast. And it became habitual over quite a long period of time. Yes, if I was doing a race, I would always eat before a race. And if I was going out on a particularly long run, I would eat. But if it was an hour or an hour and a half, I probably wouldn't eat. And I'd go out and that just became normal for me. But it's something I now don't do, and I will always eat something before I go out for a run. And yeah, partly because I knew it, and I always knew that was what you were meant to do, but it's one thing knowing it and it's one thing doing it. So I would say it's a really tricky one because I don't want to. There's been so much over the years about this and fasted training in whatever capacity, whatever you do, cycling, running, triathlon. Triathlon's terrible for it. And I think it's really important to, again, think about you as an individual. And again, it all becomes quite blurry because often the advice that we see in the, in publications or on social media, without being disrespectful, is very male orientated. And we will read stuff and we will see stuff and go, oh, this guy is doing this before he trains. Oh, I should be doing that. And it's like, whoa, no. And I think that is part of this kind of long, ongoing imbalance when it comes to the information that's available. Thankfully, now there is a lot of information available specific to women, but I think it's kind of that legacy of years and years of generic information. And I think it is really important to think, without sounding like, a bit pessimistic, it's always worth thinking about the long term when it comes to, it's great performance, doing well now, doing loads of running now, but think about how you want to feel in 5 years time, 10 years time, 15 years time, and how one kind of behavior now will impact that quite significantly.
But even some of those potential benefits from running fasted, as I say, they are far outweighed by the negative connotations that come with it. And actually, there's so much good data that's coming out at the moment that shows that the high carb approach is producing phenomenal, like, so some of the top ultra runners, and I mean, you look at all the Kenyans, and they literally live on carbs. It is all carbs almost. And yeah, I mean, some of the evidence within, particularly in the ultra marathon world, is showing that diets are at around 60 to 65% carbohydrates when when you're looking to perform as part of your macronutrients. That 65% split is producing just great results. If you want to perform, eat carbs, eat them. Yes, okay, you might get some benefit from lowering your carbs before an easy session, but eating fasted, not for me. So
Excellent.
I get on my high horse about that one.
No, it's
Thanks,
important.
Don.
It is important.
What mobility work should I do? Was a question I think it was Mia sent to me. I don't think anybody would kind of really. It's pretty obvious that I don't put mobility work in people's plans. First of all, through strength training, we get good range of motion. Certainly beyond the range of motion that is the running gait. The actual running gait, the range of motion is actually not much at all. So when we're doing things like our strength work, we're getting quite good range of motion and mobility from doing that alone anyway. But also, again, as we've spoken to, podcast guests in the past, and various people that I know around the industry, that mobility work. Do you know what? If you enjoy doing it and you think it helps you, then you go for it. But I personally don't get a huge amount of benefit from it, and I don't see much evidence for doing that mobility work as well as the stuff that we already do with our strength training anyway. I know Faye will probably slightly disagree with me on that because you like yoga and you've wrote a very good article on it.
Well, it's interesting because I think there's no one less mobile than a runner. And the reason I say that is because as runners, we move in one plane of movement and we just move forwards. And then when we ask our body, and I think the word mobility shouldn't be confused with stretching, because mobility has benefits. Stretching, I mean, I'm not going to go into this now, but mobility, if you think of mobility as moving optimally in various planes of movement, and when I say planes of movement, I mean forwards, backwards, sideways, twisting, every kind of conceivable action that you do on a daily basis. But when we run, we obviously move in one direction, and that becomes repetitive, and our body becomes fixed in this plane of movement. So all I'd say, a bit just, picking up on what Nick said, obviously, if you're going to the gym and you're doing a complete full body workout, then you're probably hitting these key movements. But what I would say, particularly if any of you, and which I know you do, if you do any kind of trail running or off-road running or mountain running, really think about kind of planes of movement. And I mean like side movements, reverse movements, because it helps with balance, coordination and strength. So it's not necessarily, you might feel like a bit of an idiot sometimes doing stuff like that in the gym, but it can have huge benefits when it comes to that kind of thing. If you are tending to do a bit of off-road or trail or fell, particularly. I was talking to one of my runners at the weekend who was saying she was struggling a bit with coordination and strength on the uneven ground, because it's something that takes time. And if you've gone from running on roads to then going running up great hills that, is uneven and, unpredictable, your body needs to adjust to that. So you can kind of try and replicate some of that in the gym by just mixing up some of your movements. I'm not saying go skipping with a barbell or something, but just kind of thinking about simple movements you could do that incorporate balance, and a bit of plyometrics as well. So don't be afraid to add in some jumps and some kind of changes of direction as well, because it's all good. Obviously, don't go mad straight away, because you'll all kind of email saying you've twisted an ankle or a knee. But just think about what you're doing, and just play around with it, and you know, don't be afraid to move in those different directions.
Yeah, I mean, some of that stuff, you know, all those hops and skips and things that I get you doing before your foundation runs, you know, pretty much all of you are right strength work for you. Get all of those planes of movement in those strength sessions. You know, your twists with your chops and your pull-off bands and the single leg movements and, you know, your hinges and everything. You get a lot of mobility and movement from that. If you then want to do extra mobility, like, you know, I know some of you do yoga, some of you do Pilates, you know, that kind of stuff. If that's stuff you enjoy, then, you know, you go off and do that as well. Yeah, stretching, we won't get onto that, will we, Faye? Waste of time. No scientific evidence really that supports it. Any others for you, Faye?
Just one last one that kind of follows on from something we spoke about on the last podcast about the long run, but not specifically about the distance, but more about the pace. So I've had this a couple of times in the last week about when it comes to pacing a long run, you know, obviously when we set different sessions, we set pace zones according to what the focus of the session is. But with a long run, you know, it is a long run, and we talk about how it's an easy run, but with more variables to it. But you know, what emphasis are we putting on pace on a long run versus, you know, getting out and just doing the run, completing the run? You know, that's it really in regards to, you know, perhaps not focusing too much on pace, but more about what you're doing, where you're running.
So for me, it depends, because if we're in kind of that base building, you know, we're starting to build our volume up over time, particularly when it comes to marathons. You know, Kyle, you're about to experience this, and you know, you've experienced it before, where, you know, it won't just be in your plan, it won't just say long road run or long trail run. We start going into marathon long run. So actually what we start doing is go, right, what is your target marathon pace for your upcoming race? And we'll break that down into chunks. So it might be an 18-mile run with quarter-mile segments at marathon pace. And then the following week, it might be a 20-mile run with half-mile at marathon pace. And then, you know, the chunks get longer, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, it really depends on where you're at in your training. If we're in that kind of that base building phase where it's just long road run, we are literally looking for you to get out there, bit of time on feet. It's almost like, for me, it's kind of like halfway between a foundation run and an endurance run. So it's like pretty much that zone 1, zone 2, nice and easy, pretty chatty. You know, that just getting that volume in, really. So it all depends on what the specific focus is at the time with those long runs. But generally, it's easy in the earlier stages of your plan. But as we start to get to race day, you know, typically 8 to 6 weeks out from your main race, then it's going to start showing up with some specific paced sections, because we need to practice running at our goal pace. Ultra marathons, you're pretty much going to be doing your long runs easy, because in fact this goes into the question that Simon has asked about when doing an ultra distance race, should I be aiming to stay in zone 2 for the vast majority? So pretty much, I mean, it depends on the length of the race. I mean, if you're an experienced and faster runner, something like a 50k, you might be kind of not far off marathon effort. But you know, when you're doing, Simon, you're doing the Arc of Attrition this weekend coming. You know, that is pretty much going to be a long, easy run with some walking, with some power walking in it. You know, it's you're not going to be pushing that, because you're going to end up burning carbohydrates too quickly. You're going to need too much fuel. You're going to struggle with your guts, and and things like that, depending on what the weather's like. So yeah, managing your effort for those longer runs is key. Another question from Simon. I plan to spend as little time as possible in the checkpoint, but aim to get as much calories in as I can. Good strategy or not? Well, we have talked about this, Simon and I. I wouldn't say that is a good strategy. Really, you want to be spreading it out over time. That's 60 to 90 grams of carbohydrate per hour. Something like an ultramarathon as testing as the Arc of Nutrition, where you're going to probably be out there for 10 to 12 hours if you're Simon, because he's pretty fast. You then also maybe thinking about having some real food mixed in amongst there. Doses enough of protein just to prevent muscle breakdown. But yeah, I certainly want to be saving up all my calories for the checkpoint, which isn't until mile 29, I think. It's mile 29 is the first checkpoint. You're going to sit down and have a 7-course taster menu.
Okay. I have got one last question that I'm going to pull out. So I've had a question about gels. And again, this is something that's come up a few times in the last couple of weeks. So thinking, firstly, gels aren't for everyone. So just to put it out there that there are other options out there in regards to quick, fast fueling. So like shot blocks, chews, stuff that resembles more food than, really sugary gel, because it doesn't work for everybody. So don't necessarily assume that that's the only approach, but just to think about intake of gels over a given period. So if you're thinking about the amount of fuel that you want to take on during an hour, for example, so you want to think about your body weight. So have a rough idea of how much you weigh, and then think about it's kind of a gram of carbs per kilogram of body weight. So for example, I use Talk gels and they've got approximately 30 grams of carbs per gel. So for me, who's somewhere around 58 to 60 kilograms usually, I'll try and take 2 gels per hour. And that is kind of my limit. If I go over that, then that's bad news. So I won't just take gels, I'll intermittent with other stuff. But in the sense of, I, as a 60-ish kilogram woman, would take on 2 gels an hour. And then as a race goes on, if it's an ultra, I'd start to eat real food. But again, I go off a rough kind of every 30 minutes when it comes to taking on a gel. It's really, really worth experimenting on yourself, though, because some people will take one 20 minutes bang on and take one every 20 minutes. That would be too much for me. But have a go and see how you tolerate it, of course, before, and how much you can deal with over a given time, because it is a lot of kind of high carb, sugary, like that your gut might not be used to, particularly if it involves fructose, for example. So that's definitely something to try before you hit a race, like a key race. But I would say think about body weight and then calculate the carbs accordingly over whatever distance you're doing. So don't go mad with it, but I would suggest, if you're going out for 2 hours, you're probably going to want at least 4 gels around that. But yeah, Dawn, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, 100%. That's why in your long run notes you'll have, pretty much from about 10, 11 miles onwards, I'll be saying to you, right now you want to start thinking about trying 60 grams of carbs per hour, which is, if you've got a good quality gel with 30 grams of carbs in each unit, then you're talking about one every half an hour, I think, which is what Faye was saying. But then as you get closer to race day, if you can tolerate it, which if you are kind of following those guidelines for long enough, and it's done gradually, by the time you get to race day, 90 grams an hour, which has been shown to be optimal, should be tolerable if you can. It is a lot. It is a lot. It's quite surprising the amount of people I talk to. They go, yeah, a couple of gels when I did my last marathon. Oh, how did you get on? Oh, yeah, I was fucked by mile 20. It's like, because you weren't fueling enough. It's really surprising when people are like, oh my God, I've got 12 gels or 15 gels in my belt. But that's that's where we're at.
So Nick, just on the gel thing, a couple of questions for you and Faye. So first of all, is there any difference with absorption on like your slow, easy runs taking gels compared to if you're absolutely going flat out? And the second part is a question about caffeine in gels. So I kind of had in my mind before, kind of that was towards the end of a marathon, but I've heard some people would take every other one as being a gel, as a caffeine, or what your thoughts are?
Yeah, cool. Good couple of ones there. So first of all, the caffeine one I'll answer because that's pretty easy. So caffeine has a half-life, so it takes a bit of time to get in. So when you hear people saying, "Oh, well, I'll have the caffeine gel towards the end of the race," or for those of you who've done like hilly ultra marathons, for example, and you hear people going, "Oh, right, I'm going to have a caffeine gel just as they get to the bottom of the hill." Well, it won't have kicked in. It takes a little bit of time to kick in. On a marathon, you sort of your best bet is to be trying to have it about 90 minutes before the end of your race finish. So then you've got about half an hour, 45 minutes for it to absorb, and then half an hour, 45 minutes for it to actually help. Because what the caffeine will do is it just helps with that time to exhaustion. It will will help you finish your race stronger. And if you are doing an ultra marathon and you think, right, I've got a big bloody hill I got to get up, you want to be having that kind of 40 half an hour, 45 minutes before you reach the hill. In terms of intensity, yes, that is correct. If you are out doing a pretty slow, easy, chilled out, long run, 2.5, 3 hours, you could get away with probably having no extra fuel at all. However, pretty much all of us here are, in fact, all of us here are training for an event, and therefore practicing the gut, because the gut can be and needs to be trained to be able to tolerate fuel. Then that's when we start introducing gels. We might not need them entirely for that run. However, it is going to help with recovery afterwards and actually performance on the run itself. You're going to get a better quality of long run, even though it is a little bit easier. When you start thinking about those marathon pace long runs, for example, that we were talking about just now, absolutely you want to be fueling them, because you know what, by the time you get to mile 14, 15, and you're trying to knock out half a mile at marathon pace and you've done 10 of those already, you're probably going to start to struggle if you're not fueling on those runs. But that's where but you're not going to be able to go into those kind of runs if you haven't been practicing in the lead up to it. Hence that's why I if you weren't training for anything specific and you were just going out for a couple of hours worth of running, I probably wouldn't say, well, first of all, you probably wouldn't have a coach because you were just running for the fun of it. But also, if you're not practicing, you're not training for something specific, then there's probably not much need for that much additional fuel. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think the only other thing I was thinking of is does the absorption ability of a gel change depending on how much you're exerting yourself? Am I going to be able to stomach a gel better under exertion compared to if I'm doing a long, easy run and I'm just taking it to train the gut?
Yeah, well, that's why we train the gut over a period of time, because then when the intensity does go up and more blood is coming out of the stomach and being drawn to the working muscles, the gut is more used to it being in there, and it'll absorb because it's been trained to. The gut is like a muscle. You can train it. Hence, that's why I wouldn't say to you, right, 6 weeks out from London, let's start trying with our gels now. And you're trying to run marathon pace at the same time. because we need that lead up of training to be able to deal with that intensity and deal with that absorption.
Sure. Thank you.
I don't think I've got any more questions. Oh yes, sorry, I have two more actually from somebody I've got who has been doing ultras for a very long time, long distances, and she wants to go back to doing fast stuff. She's kind of had enough a little bit of the really long stuff. She's been doing it for quite a long time. And do you know what? I'm a big believer in, Faye, you've been kind of going through this quite recently. That, do you know what? If you need a bit of a break, it's actually a really good idea to have one. We can't just be kind of constantly training for these massive races. No. It is good to back off. Sometimes for some people, that might be a week. For some people, it might be 6 months. For some people, it might be longer. But yeah, her question is, what do you do when you're super bored with running long, but have booked races that you want to go to? And my suggestion on that was, okay, so what can we do with the rest of your week? Because this kind of goes into that conversation we've been having around, the importance of the long run. Whilst long runs are important, I think when you are a fairly well-trained individual, if this kind of thing is starting to crop up, instead of maybe doing an 18-mile long run, 20-mile long run on the weekend, let's take a couple of miles and put them on Thursday. Let's take a couple of more miles and put them on Tuesday. Let's spread that volume out throughout the week so that you're not having to go out and do, those super long runs. She runs on her own, so it's not, it isn't easy, especially she's quite a social person. And then, once you've done your race and you've got over it, then it is worth having a little bit of a think about what is it you want to do. And I know she wants to get back to running hard and fast again, which goes into her second question. When you're in the habit of running slow and easy, how do you get out of that and pick up the pace? And there's somebody else I've been talking about this as well, where it's about getting used to being comfortably uncomfortable, doing those hard intervals. She's been training for ultras for quite a while now, so we haven't been doing any of those really hard runs. She hasn't been able to go to park run for quite a while, so she hasn't been in the pain cave running around the park on Saturdays all that often. So yeah, when you're kind of over that ultra, it'll be back into, if you want to do that fast running again, we'll start doing some short intervals of maybe 30 seconds, 60 minutes, and then we'll start picking up and we'll do 90 seconds, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and we'll build back into that hard stuff and getting used to being uncomfortable again. I've been there quite recently, trying to do 3-minute hard hills and Satan's ladder and 5-minute thresholds. It's been so alien to me for so long because of my hernia and stuff last year. Getting used to being uncomfortable again has been it's you do get in a bit of a habit. What do you think on the first bit, Faye, with the when you're super bored with running long?
My suggestion is step away from it before you start hating it, because I've come across this quite a few times in since I've been running, when I say properly, but I get sick of it. I absolutely hate it. The thought of doing up my trainers and going out for a run when I'm in one of those kind of slumps, I'm like, I cannot do it. And I think it was in October, Nick, after I did Winter Trail half, that I came back and I turned around to Nick and I said, I'm sick of it. I don't want any more programs. Every session was just winding me up and just making me think, I hate it. I hate those intervals. I don't want to do. And I just said to him, can I take a break and can you not plan me anything? I just want to run. And it took, what was it? Probably
2 weeks ago.
3 months.
Yeah. So a couple of weeks ago,
pretty much
you
3
came back to me and went, right,
where
let's go.
Yeah, and I needed 3 months of just running and just enjoying it again and not having a structure or being told what to do, because I was like, I don't want to be told what to do. I just want to run. But I needed that time out and I needed to decide what I wanted to do. And again, I've decided to focus a little bit more on shorter stuff because I'm a bit sick of going out for 4 or 5 hours on a Sunday on my own and just it was just I was just bored. So I thought, no, I'm going to focus on shorter stuff. But actually, a revelation, and I was saying this to a friend, I ran listening to a podcast yesterday. I haven't run listening to anything at all for about 7 years. So yesterday I decided to put some headphones in and run. And I will say, how awesome was that? I should have done that sooner. But yeah, it made the 2 hours go a lot quicker.
It's almost as though somebody needs to make a podcast as well. Yeah. No, good. Thank you, everybody. Unless there are any more questions. Do you want, actually, Deb Murray's on here, and she asked me a question about Normatec boots. I don't know. I just quite like those Normatec boots. I don't know if anybody's used them, but they're like these. They pump up and they squeeze your legs, and they're supposed to increase circulation stuff. I quite like them. I don't have a particular protocol. I don't think. I don't know if we've got enough science on it. Maybe it's just one of those gimmicks, but I did buy them, and they are nice. I can see Kyle. He's about to go. He's about to go on the internet and order some Normatec boots. I can see it in his eyes.
Just get in the buff, people.
My budget for the Alpha Fly 3s is gone out the window because I can't find them anywhere. So I've desperately looked, but I was too late by about 1 hour.
They're not out yet, are they?
Yeah, the prototype's out in the UK. You could have bought them, but you had to have been quick.
Ah, the prototypes, right? Okay. I think they're releasing them like the 4th of April or something. So it panic buys them before London. I know.
Why would they do that?
I know.
You know.
And on that bombshell, thank you, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Maximum Mileage Running podcast.
You can find more out about us at maximummileagecoaching.com. If you think you need help with your running and you think that either myself or Faye could be the coach for you, then drop us an inquiry. No obligation whatsoever, and we'll have a chat with you about your running. And there's plenty of resources on the website as well. And don't forget, you can join us on the Maximum Mileage Running Podcast Facebook group. Until next time.
See ya.
Bye.